Good morning, everybody. How are you? I'll give everybody a couple minutes. It's 2025. I hope everybody had a great early start to their 2025. Everybody's safe. Everybody's healthy. I know in Portland we are knee deep in flu season, so I hope everybody's doing well. It's rough out there. But yeah, I'll give everybody a couple minutes and we'll get started. Looking forward to chatting today. We're going to continue our Menopause and series. We've covered some good ground. Talked about sleep. We talked about night sweats and hot flashes. So today we're going to cover GI symptoms in menopause. So that's going to be the talk for today. Good morning. Talk about menopause today. Our normal 10 o'clock live on Thursdays. Good morning. How are you? It's good to see you. So we'll get started in a couple minutes. We'll give people a couple minutes just to kind of stream in. But I'd love to hear how is the new year. Happy New Year. But love to hear how the new year is. One thing I've been thinking about is, we tend to set all these New Year's resolutions and, I'm going to start doing this. I'm going to start doing that. And one of the things I sent out to the folks that are on my listserv is, how about we just think of one thing that we want to challenge ourselves with? Just one thing. What do we want? Not because we're trying to be hard on ourselves or torture ourselves, but just one thing to kind of help us grow, make us stronger, and just focus on that one thing for this year. So my thing is strength, physical, mental. So that's going to be my challenge for the year. And starting things off on the physical side, I've got 3 races I'm going to run this year. Well, 2 so far that I've confirmed. I may add another one. Doing a half marathon and then a relay race, and I may add another half. So that's my challenge to myself for the year. But I'd love to hear as we sort of let people stream in, what people have planned for 25. How are you going to kind of challenge yourself, keep sort of pushing and moving the needle in whatever way, whether that's physical, mental, emotional, financial even, right? I mean, all of that sort of goes towards keeping us healthy and vital and living a high quality life. So I love it. More in community. Yes, that's a great one. I love that. It's funny, COVID, when that happened, and it seems like so distant, but at least for me as a doc, one thing I noticed as we started to sort of see the ramifications, there were definitely some physical ramifications, but the emotional toll that lack of community put on everybody has been just heartbreaking to see, because we all went, into our houses, into ourselves, and we didn't socialize. We didn't have that community. And I still see the ramifications of that in kids, right? Depending on what age they were. I see it in adults. So trying to come back to each other, I think is profoundly important. So I would 100% agree with that. Community is just, oh my gosh, can be so powerful and so amazing. And even if we have to build it virtually, right? I mean, we can still make time and opportunities to do a Zoom and whatever and connect with people all over the world that are like-minded, they're moving in the same direction. So community is huge. Obviously in person now when we can is even better. So all right, maybe we'll get started about 4 minutes in. Hopefully other folks will join us. So today my goal was to talk about GI symptoms in menopause. Gut health is so profoundly important. So I wanted to just touch on that and spend a little bit of time on that. So I threw on I forget what it's called, I don't know, feed or something, kind of gut dysbiosis, or, how there's a difference between a healthy gut and an unhealthy gut. So there's a photo that I posted, and I'll try to walk through some of that. And maybe I'll do that as a foundation, and then we'll talk about, okay, what happens in menopause, and then how do we try our best to support our gut health through menopause, perimenopause, and then well into postmenopause. So if we back up just a little bit to talk about, gut health. So in our gut, there is bacteria, parasites, they're all sort of living in community. And there should be a healthy balance of that. You've got, I'll call it healthy or healthy bacteria, and then you've got opportunistic or unhealthy bacteria. And they sort of coexist together. The goal is you have more healthy gut bacteria that creates a healthy lining, creates this mucus lining on the gut so that the cells are tightly packed, right? If you think about a fence, you want the fence to be really tight, right? As the fence, I did this sort of webinar with a functional nutritionist, and she has this analogy, and I thought it was just amazing that if you think about your gut lining as a fence, you don't want to see through that fence, right? As your fence gets a little warped, the boards start to get a little bit loose, and you can start to see your neighbor. Well, if that happens, then things from inside the lumen of your gut can now sneak out and get into your bloodstream and can cause autoimmune reactions, can cause chronic inflammation. And those we're starting to understand are the beginnings of a lot of what we treat in healthcare, right? Inflammatory bowel disease. We know we can help people at least lower their medication needs when it comes to rheumatoid arthritis, because that's an autoimmune disease. Potentially Crohn's, right? Can we help people, again, reduce their need for, medication when it comes to Crohn's, these sort of bowel diseases. And then for sure, infections. Our immunity really comes from our gut. So if we're seeing all that stuff crossing that cell lining, then our body's reacting to that. We've got this chronic inflammation. That inflammation can then lead to metabolic syndrome. So your gut is like king when it comes to really overall health. Your thyroid function, you do thyroid conversion in your gut. So when you think about metabolism, as we get into our perimenopause and menopausal transition, metabolism is wildly important. So making sure you're doing that conversion of thyroid hormone appropriately means you've got to have a healthy gut. So again, you've got healthy bacteria, you've got, opportunistic bacteria. They coexist. You want the healthy bacteria to be higher in quantity. You also want a diversity of bacteria. And the way we get there is by eating fiber. So when we eat fiber, and it's best to eat, I get asked all the time, hey, doc, can I just do the Metamucil and the psyllium and stuff in my juice and just drink that? There is something magical that happens when we actually eat fiber. So the fiber gets fermented in our gut. It's that fermentation that creates short chain fatty acids. One of them is called butyrate. Butyrate is like magic when it comes to creating that nice mucus layer. So on your cells in your gut, there should be this layer of mucus that's protective. It's preventing things, all this, environmental things, toxins that are in our environment, foods that we eat, all that stuff up here, that thick mucus layer prevents all of that from getting through and into our system or into our sort of bloodstream. So to create that thick mucus layer, you need butyrate. Well, to make more butyrate, you need fiber, because it's the fermentation of the fiber that creates that butyrate. So eating fiber is paramount when it comes to creating gut health. What can happen, there's soluble and insoluble fiber, because sometimes people, if you go too fast with adding fiber, you can get really bloated. Again, that fermentation, if you think about, putting something in a jar, when you ferment things, you put it in a jar, it can sort of expand. It creates gas in doing that. So you need to go slow when you're introducing fiber into your diet. And you can sort of learn how to dial in your fiber, the kind of fiber you're eating, soluble or insoluble, so that you can adjust your stool pattern, right? Are you getting constipated? Are you getting too loose? So all of that stuff, that's what I spend time talking about with my patients. It's how do we introduce some of that in a way that's comfortable, but that creates just this amazing gut health. So we eat the fiber, and again, we can adjust the kind of fiber we're eating. That creates butyrate. Butyrate starts to thicken that mucin layer, that protective layer, so that we don't allow things to get through that cell lining. That's the foundation of gut health, right? The things that, in addition to fiber, are going to be, and I'm sorry, let me back up. Where you get fiber are fruits, veggies, and certain fruits and veggies are going to be sort of the big powerhouse for that. Whole grains, so think couscous, quinoa, bulgur, farro, those sorts of things. And then beans and legumes. That's where you get your fiber. That's it. So there's no fiber in animal products. So meat, those sorts of things are not going to have eggs. Those things are not going to have fiber. If we're eating highly processed foods, that's going to strip our gut lining. If we're drinking alcohol, that's going to upset our gut lining. Even medications, certain medications, antibiotics is like the worst thing for our gut. They're necessary in certain cases, but they are really challenging on your gut. So things that we do, again, toxins in our environment, stress can change your gut health. So the idea is you want to eat the things that are going to promote a really healthy gut, and then manage all your environmental factors, manage your lifestyle so that we can really support a healthy gut. Now, let's say we're crushing it, right? We've got a great gut. We're eating our fiber. We're managing our stress. We're drinking enough water. We're not consuming, significant amount of alcohol, or no alcohol is honestly the best. We're not on antibiotics regularly. So we're doing all the things. We've got great health. We're trucking along. Here we go. 30s, 40s, perimenopause starts. What can happen during perimenopause, and then again, menopausal transition, and then postmenopause, is estrogen and progesterone affect smooth muscle and how well they contract. If you think about your gut, it's about, pushing things through a tube, and that requires what's called peristalsis, right? You got to kind of push things through. Well, that's muscle contraction. So as our estrogen level declines, that peristalsis, or that muscle contraction, starts to decline. So food is just sort of sitting in there. It's not moving along, which again increases our risk of constipation, increases our risk of just feeling so full and nasty all the time. We can get bloated, right? All of these things. If we think back when we were actually menstruating, and for those that are postmenopausal and aren't menstruating anymore, but think about puberty, with our cycle, as our estrogen and progesterone sort of waxed and waned, there's always this period, right, where we're like, we know we're about to menstruate because we get so bloated, we feel uncomfortable, right? It's the same thing, right? But now we're on the back end of things. But it's the same hormones in play, just at different quantities. So you get bloated, you feel constipated, you're just uncomfortable. So that's a natural thing, unfortunately, that happens as we transition through perimenopause and then into menopause. So then your gut health becomes infinitely more important. So again, you're dialing in your fiber. So if we're getting constipated, then we need to adjust the kind of fiber we're eating. We need to make sure we're upping our water. We need to make sure we're exercising. So exercise really helps with gut motility. That can be profoundly helpful. So making sure we're getting up and we're moving and we're exercising. When it comes to your metabolism, again, if we don't have that great gut health, or again, as our estrogen declines, our metabolism may start to decline. So then we need to introduce weight training to increase our muscle mass. Muscle is going to increase our metabolic rates. So all of that starts to become infinitely more important as we transition, through perimenopause and menopause. What else? So the food becomes important. Really managing our lifestyle becomes important. How much, what are we doing outside of what we eat? Are we sleeping well? Again, and that plays into night sweats and all of that. So all of this stuff kind of builds on itself. Are we drinking alcohol? Are we getting enough exercise so that we can do our best to manage our gut and then hopefully prevent some of these downstream symptoms of constipation and bloating and, just feeling uncomfortable and those sorts of things. So I just talked a lot. And if you know me by now, I don't like to be the one doing all the talking. So are there any questions? Like, is anybody out there, is GI like, oh my God, yeah, that's my thing. That's what I struggle with the most. Any questions or comments or anything like that? Okay. All right. Any questions outside of this particular topic? Oh, that's good. I'm glad that's helpful. Yeah. Awesome. Happy to do it. Yeah. And it's, a lot of times when I talk to patients in my office and, for me, it's so important to spend time. Oh my God, time. Traditional healthcare, we get 15, 20 minutes in most cases. And that's why I really decided I have to do this differently. So I have a private practice where I can spend up to an hour with people. And even with that, sometimes it's not enough time. So if I need to, plugging patients in with a nutritionist who, if they need more guidance, right? Okay, how do I really do this thing day to day? Having good resources for people, a nutritionist that can really walk the walk with them. I can certainly spend more time, and that's the beauty, right? There's no clock. There's no, you can only see me once a year or once every 6 months. It's, we can meet weekly if we needed to really dial in some of these lifestyle and nutrition things. So my private practice just allows me the latitude to really take good care of people and to just do what I feel called to do. So any questions on menopause other than gut health? Anything else? Yes. Oh my God. Absolutely. So the question was, acid reflux can be tied to this. Yes, for sure. So there are certain foods, right, that will typically worsen acid reflux. So spicy, caffeine will do it, smoking does it, alcohol can. And then again, if we have any kind of gut dysbiosis, that'll do it. What else? Citrus. So tomatoes, like a lot of tomato-based things will also worsen acid reflux. So for sure, when I see people with acid reflux, my first thing is I do a dietary recall. I want to know, what are you eating, what are you drinking, and how are you moving through the day? That is like those are my first 3 questions. And I address that first, right? Again, I'm very much lifestyle. We have meds for just about everything out there, but every single medication has a risk and it has a downside to it. Sure, there's some benefit, but there's risk. And it's always about, okay, is the benefit outweigh the risk? For me, lifestyle is a no risk proposition. There's only upside to it. So if we're managing our lifestyle, and lifestyle is, what are we eating? Are we moving? What are we drinking? Do we manage our stress? Do we have good social connection? And are we engaging any risky substances, right? So all of those, manage that. And then if we're really stuck and this is really affecting our quality of life, then I start saying, okay, do we want to use a medication? And can we use it in the short term? But the goal is, can we get you off of it? But yeah, acid reflux for sure. Yes. So the big thing would be a dietary recall. What are we eating during the day? And then are we moving? Those are the 2 big. And then again, any kind of like, stress, alcohol, those sorts of things, to make sure we can unwind that acid reflux. Yeah. Estrogen also gets involved with like, bile, production. So gallbladder. So we eat food, usually if it's fatty, greasy, fried food, your gallbladder has to secrete bile in order to break that stuff down. Well, estrogen, as that estrogen declines, the bile production is not as efficient. So if we're still eating those fried, fatty, greasy sort of things, we're just you're not gonna feel well, because you just don't have the ability to break that stuff down. So you might notice that you need to start to pare that stuff down, but that's a blessing, because that stuff just it wreaks havoc on our gut as far as, again, the health of your gut. So paring those things down would be wildly important, and replacing it with the way I describe food. And food, it can be such a political conversation, and it really shouldn't be, and it shouldn't be complicated either. I feel like we've made nutrition really hard for people. If you just think about food, you want to eat whole food that looks like food. So it's better to eat an apple than it is to eat applesauce, than it is to drink apple juice. You want it as close to the whole food as possible. So whole food, mostly plants, right? As close as you are willing to get to eating mostly plant-based, that's the healthiest eating pattern. Not everybody wants or needs to be vegan, but really as close to eating plant-based as you can get, and eating food that looks like food is by far the healthiest eating pattern, because that's where you're going to get all your fiber, that's where you get all your phytonutrients, that's where you get, all your antioxidants, that's where we reverse, metabolic disease, which are syndrome, which leads to type 2 diabetes, which we know is the root cause of heart disease. I mean, that's the foundational eating pattern that I tend to recommend to everybody. Eat food that looks like food, mostly plants. Anything else? So one other thing I wanted to touch on is probiotics. And again, it's kind of like, hey, doc, can I just drink my fiber, right? Can I mix the Metamucil, or can I mix the psyllium husk, and is that good enough? So probiotics, same sort of concept. They can be wildly helpful. And I would also say that the first step, in my opinion, is, again, creating that foundational eating pattern to support probiotics. So the idea is back to that same, high fiber, go slow though, high fiber nutritional pattern, reducing alcohol, reducing the fried, fatty, greasy, reducing the highly processed, reducing the highly refined foods, and really loading your plate. Fiber first, whole food that looks like food, mostly plants. That's the eating pattern to start to create that appropriate gut lining, increase that butyrate production, and then absolutely we can add probiotic on it. I'm a huge fan of the Pendulum line, both for probiotics as well as actual so Akkermansia is a bacteria that is known to sort of increase butyrate production. So taking Akkermansia, which is in this probiotic strain, as well as Clostridium, it's in that probiotic strain. So I'm a huge fan of the Pendulum product. This is I'm going to take a quick sidebar. So Pendulum, again, as a doc, my goal is to really be the one that does the heavy lifting for you, to say, okay, I've done the vetting, I've done the research. Pendulum is done the research on how do we really create these strains that are going to support gut health. Has anyone heard the term GLP-1? Do people know about these meds? Just a quick raise your hand if you've heard it. No. Okay. So GLP-1, it's a class of medication that are being used for weight loss. So Ozempic, Wegovy, Mounjaro, those. Okay. All right. Yeah. So it's a class of medication for weight loss. And the premise is to increase, it's basically taking, injecting GLP, which is a peptide that our body naturally creates in our gut, right? So we're giving it to ourselves through an injection, and the idea is this peptide decreases our appetite, decreases our, like our craving for food, which then leads to weight loss. So it's being used in the setting of either people who have a high BMI. As we know, obesity can cause some downstream health effects, or if you have documented type 2 diabetes, right? So again, induce some weight loss and try to lower your hemoglobin A1C, which is the number we use to measure, how high is your glucose. So those medications are being used in that context. So Pendulum has actually done research around, okay, what strains of bacteria will naturally increase your own production of GLP-1. So that's why I really like this product, is because they've done the work, and it's actually science, they've done the research around it. So they have a GLP-1 probiotic. The goal, again, you're getting the bacterial strains to increase the short chain fatty acid production, to do that thick mucus lining, and those bacterial strains increase your own production of GLP-1. So it can be helpful for, again, sort of satiety, feeling full, so that you're not snacking as much. It can help with cravings and those sorts of things. So I really like the Pendulum products. I think they're fantastic. I recommend them in my office. If I see people with, again, gut dysbiosis, a lot of gut stuff, I put them on a Pendulum product, whether it's the probiotic or just one particular strain called Akkermansia. So I have a Full Script account. Full Script is a way that we can get supplements to people, and I pass along, it's a 35% discount from what you can buy off the shelf. And I pass along 35, the full discount. So if people are interested in getting supplements, I'm happy to share that with you and get you set up, and you can purchase those on your own. But I really like the Pendulum products. I think they're great. Yeah. I don't remember how I got on that. Was there a question, or did I just, I was talking probiotics. Yeah. So again, foundational food first, right? Eating your fiber, whole food, and then adding a supplement on top, just to sort of continue to sort of support that gut health. And then added benefit, this GLP-1 production, if weight loss or metabolic health is important, because that GLP-1 can be really, really helpful for, quieting the noise, helping us lose weight, which can affect our metabolic health. And again, that metabolic health is what's the underlying, or disease or dysfunction. That's the underlying cause, chronic inflammation for type 2 diabetes and, downstream heart disease and those sorts of things. So super, super important. What else? I will say one other thing about GLP-1, since I jumped on that topic. Good morning. Be careful about compounded. I would just be careful about using compounded. There's some pharmacies out there that are doing compounded GLP-1s. As a doc, I would order the product itself as opposed to compounded. So I will just say that, because I know there's some patients that are getting them, off the internet. There are a lot of popping up sort of telehealth-based practices that are solely weight loss, and doing compounded meds, because the products that have been tested and manufactured, they're expensive. So folks are looking for other options. So there's compounded GLP-1s are all over the place. So I would just be careful with those. Yeah. So for those that just joined, we were talking about menopause and today was gut health, like GI stuff, right? Constipated, bloated, just feel bleh, those sorts of things. So we set the stage for, what builds good gut health, just even outside the topic of menopause, and how do we really maximize that, and then understanding as we go through this perimenopause and then, transition through to menopause and postmenopause, estrogen, that decline creates sort of slows our gut motility, that peristalsis that pushes food through. So it increases our risk of getting constipated and getting bloated. And then again, estrogen decreases bile production. So we may find an intolerance with eating fried, fatty, greasy, because our gallbladder is not pushing out bile sufficiently enough to sort of break down those fattier, greasier things. So those can become challenging, and you just may feel really lousy eating that. So transitioning to what I like to just teach people as a foundational eating pattern is food that looks like food. Eat whole food. Eat the apple rather than the applesauce, rather than apple juice, right? Eat the food as close to its original form. Eating close to the ground is another way to think of it, right? As we process things and make them more and more refined, that just trashes our gut. So eat whole food, food that looks like food, and as plant-based and plant-strong as you're willing to get. That is by far the best nutritional pattern from a health perspective. So that's kind of the road. And then we digressed into GLP-1s, and we talked about probiotics and Pendulum, which is a brand that I really, really love. So that's kind of the summary. And I think most people on here know me, but yeah, I'm a private practice doc in Portland. I have my own practice that I just love spending time and taking care of people in a good way and helping them understand and educating and supporting them through this. So any questions, anything else, whether GI or otherwise? You guys got me. I feel like we got through that pretty quickly. So I'm happy to spend some more time just with some open questions if there's anything. Okay. One thing I'm really looking at in this year is, okay, take your time, is I like this, but I really feel like having a space where we can be more real time would be helpful. Would anybody appreciate that? Whether it's doing some Zooms or live, not a live, but like a Zoom together where we can actually respond and interact in a little bit more of a real time as opposed to having to type. And then also a place where we can share, right? Be a little bit more vulnerable and transparent with what we're going through, get support from each other, do some cooking together, maybe do some exercise stuff together, build community. So I'm putting that together, a private community just for women, as we sort of do this transition, right? And then well into postmenopause. So even after menopause, we don't kick you out. We want you in there to sort of help us that are going through, like what worked for you. Bring in experts around hormone therapy and sleep and relationships. There's a urologist, there's a gynecologist and she's also does Urogyne, who wants to be a part of this and talk about all the genitourinary things that happen in menopause, which is like a whole nother bucket. So she's already raised her hand and wants to be a part of this. So how does that strike everybody? So let me know, is that something you'd like to be involved in? So give me some feedback on that. All right, I got another question. You mentioned brain health and importance of exercise. If someone is already showing signs of dementia, Alzheimer's, ooh, that's a good one. Yeah. For me, it's never too late, right? It's never ever too late. I think the other thing, so the question is, if we're already showing signs of cognitive decline, like dementia, can exercise slow the process down? I would say yes. And the other thing I would add is, again, nutrition. And I know I'm like a broken record when it comes to nutrition, right? But vascular health, if you think about it, yes. Okay, good. Some people are interested. Love it. All right. Do me a favor. Will you send me a direct message so that I have your name? And then that way I can communicate with you so that when this goes live, I can let you know directly. So for those that are interested in the kind of private community, just send me a message directly so that I can keep track of that. Okay. So when it comes to brain health, the same things we talk about for cardiovascular health are the same recommendations for brain health, because it's all about your vascular system. So I think sometimes we think cardiovascular, we're just talking about the pump, right? Just the heart. But if you think about it, the cardiovascular system is the pump as well as everything that stems from it. So, good morning. We've got some folks coming. Hi, how are you? I'm talking about brain health, and if you're already showing signs of dementia, are there things we can do to slow this process down? So when it comes to brain health, think about vascular health as kind of the underlying thing to address. So the way we create vascular health is about keeping the pipe, right? So you got the pump, the heart, and then all the pipes that lead from it, which leads to our kidney, which leads to our brain, which leads to all of our organs, right? So the pipe, keeping the pipe healthy, has to do with what are we eating, right? What are the things that are actually going to support vascular health? Exercise is profoundly important. Sleep is profoundly important. So let me start with these three things first. So from a nutritional standpoint, the things that are going to create the best vascular health lining of the blood vessels are the exact same recommendations as I mentioned before when it comes to gut health. It's food that looks like food, whole food, mostly plants. The reason is those foods have been shown to actually create, so the lining of the blood vessels, called the intimal lining, is going to be the healthiest with those food choices. Saturated fats are the things that are going to sort of worsen your vascular lining. The other things that saturated fats will do, they will increase your LDL, or your low density lipoprotein. I'm having a separate conversation about cholesterol. Like, what the heck are these numbers? What do they mean? Is it genetic? Is it lifestyle? What do you do about it? And that's free. So if you want to be invited to that, let me know. I posted it on my, what is it called? I don't know, story thing. This is where I start to show my age. I'm like, oh God, I don't know all these terms. Anyway, so it's on my Instagram, and there's a link that you can join. It's totally free. I think it's a week and a half from now on a Monday. So separate, we're going to talk all about cholesterol. So again, saturated fats are going to increase your LDL. LDL, low density lipoprotein, that particular lipoprotein is the thing that can kind of get into your intimal lining, can kind of recruit some of its friends, cause plaque, right? Atherosclerosis. And then it takes a tube that is this big with lots of healthy blood going, and it makes it, a quarter of the size, because now you got this big honking plaque in it. Well, if you think about that, the same way that's going to change blood supply everywhere else, it's going to change blood supply to the brain. It may not cause a stroke, but it's not perfusing the brain well, right? It's not creating good vascular health. So those same recommendations go to brain health. So really cleaning up our nutrition is profoundly important when it comes to brain health. Then, and I can go into way more detail, but at least for now, we'll leave it at just sort of a basic conversation around nutrition. So there's nutrition. Then there's exercise. Absolutely, exercise makes a profound difference in our brain health as well as our cardiovascular health. So, and if we talk about it in the context of menopause, there's some additional sort of things, because we really have to do more strength training as we go through perimenopause and menopause. We really need to build muscle mass, is wildly important for us. Prior to that, you can absolutely do it, but it just becomes even more important, right? So a good base of aerobic exercise. Then we want to do sort of functional training, right? Can we do the basic things? Like, are we working on balance, right? That becomes really important as we sort of get wiser in our years and for brain health. So balance is super important. Our proprioception, strength training, and then just cardiovascular. So just basic kind of aerobic exercise. So exercise is wildly important. There's something magical that happens when you walk with a friend or you exercise in community. That has actually, by research, been shown to improve brain health. So that is wildly important. And then sleep. So when we sleep is when our brain actually does all of its sort of rinsing and repairing. That's where we actually encode our memory. So sleep is like critical when it comes to brain health. And the interesting thing, unfortunately, is if we are showing signs of dementia, our sleep pattern can change, right? Sometimes we have this nighttime delirium that happens depending on how late that course is. So I would say if somebody is already showing signs of dementia, I would clean up their nutrition, like get as tight as you can with eating plant-based, whole food, healthy fats. I would, if they're drinking alcohol, I would take that out 100%. I would get a good base of exercise going depending on what their functional status is. I would start working if they don't feel comfortable. If they haven't started, I would get them some support to start them, getting them up, moving, get a good base of exercise. And then I would do whatever I can to maximize their sleep so that we can preserve, their cognitive health for long term. The crazy thing about dementia, and I mean, honestly, it's a lot of what we treat in medicine. The disease started years ago, right? The process started 10, 20 years ago, but it doesn't present itself till much later. Same thing with type 2 diabetes, right? Metabolic syndrome or insulin resistance started years ago, but it doesn't become diagnostic, for 5, 10, 15 years. And then in healthcare, traditional healthcare, that's when they say, now you have type 2 diabetes. Oh, now we can start using medication. But that disease process happened way before, and you can see it in labs. You can see it by doing a lifestyle assessment. You can watch their fasting sugar slowly rise. You can watch their hemoglobin A1C. Both of these are late findings. You can watch your liver function slowly increase. That's metabolic dysfunction. That leads to type 2 diabetes. So, that stuff happens, well before it becomes diagnostic. So did that answer your question? Okay, perfect. Okay. All right. So again, if you're interested in, because one thing I'm finding with these is I would love more real time, right? If you have a question, hey, raise my hand, let's get into it, as opposed to folks having to type. So I would love a little bit more of an intimate way to interact and answer questions, a place where we can come together, exercise together, cook together, those sorts of things. So I've created sort of this private community around that concept as we go through this menopausal transition. So if that's something you're interested in, just send me a separate message and I will connect with you and find a way to invite you in there. I want to get some early folks in there, test it out, take the training wheels off, give me feedback, let me know if it's something that's helpful, help me build something really cool. So I'm looking for folks that are willing to be sort of these early testers. So I'm happy to share that link and invite you in. So you can help me build something that hopefully can be helpful and useful. And then again, I believe it's on the 13th, I posted a separate sort of webinar or live event that I'm doing, like Zoom, where we're going to really get into the weeds about cholesterol, like really break it down. Like, what does it mean? What do your labs mean? How to understand it? What additional testing should we be doing? What additional testing I do in my clinic, and why do I do it? Is it genetic? Is it lifestyle? How do you modify your risk? All of those questions. And then it's going to be a way for us to interact, right? Just boom, raise your hand. What's your question? And not have to type so frantically. So that'll be on the 13th, and that's completely free, and it's open to anybody, male, female, whoever. So please share that widely with, your friends and family. I just want people to understand all these labs we draw on them. I don't think we spend enough time helping them understand them. So that'll be there for you. Okay. Anything else before we take off today? Okay. All right. Well, Happy New Year. Have a fantastic year. Hope you challenge yourself this year with something, you know, something that makes you stronger, something at the end of the year you can look back and say, hell yeah, I'm proud of that. So have a great, great year. I'll see you guys next week. All right. Take care. Bye-bye.